Welcome to Merger Wednesdays on the Final Boss podcast, where the future isn't coming, it's already happening. This is the merge, the convergence of AI kind and humankind. Not theory, not hype, but real-time evolution. Each week, we break down doctoral-level insights, turning complex innovation into conversations that move culture forward. From machine learning to human consciousness, from automation to identity, this is where intellect meets impact. The question isn't if the merge will happen, it's who will light it. Tap in, level up, and think beyond the algorithm. This is Merger Wednesdays. New era, same boss.
Welcome to the Final Boss podcast, episode number. Look, we'll get into that later. But welcome for all of you who are just now joining us. Thank you for what in the world? That's not supposed to happen. Okay. Remedy that problem. That's what we do, man. We fix problems over here. Listen, tonight's show, right? Tonight's show is I got a great show for you, right? But before we get into that, let me go ahead and get into the admin notes that I have for the evening. If you haven't already, go pick up Go Time, All Aboard the Fired Up Train. Go Time, All Aboard the Fired Up Train. It's an Amazon bestseller. Go pick it up, please. Go pick it up. Look, like, share, subscribe, like, share, subscribe. Don't gatekeep. Make sure you are like, sharing, and subscribing the content. Thank you for each and every single one of you. Hey, please keep the emails coming. Keep the questions coming, right? If you want to be part of the town hall, send those emails in at info@thefinalbosspodcast.com. That's info@thefinalbosspodcast.com. Tomorrow I have a great special guest coming on the show. Her name is Lanisha Walker, right? And I'm not going to get into who she is, but you will have to be here tomorrow at 9 p.m. live to find out, right? She'll be our special guest tomorrow. Shout out to Lanisha Walker. Shout out to her and her business, right? Or businesses, I should say, right? So, look. Let's see who's here. Hey. Chicandi's in the building. Andrea's in the building. Steve's in the building. Mike's in the building. Apple 61526 is in the building. A couple other people are in the building. Come on, man. Get on in here for this information. Y'all know tonight is Merger Wednesdays, right? Merger Wednesdays is the doctoral show, and I got some great information. I got a great show that you are going to love tonight. Let's go ahead and get rid of these banners right here. And if you need to go watch all of our episodes, man, to backtrack and see what's going on here at the Final Boss Podcast and see how in the world we're almost at episode 250. Can you believe it? 250 is almost here, man. 2 more episodes will be the halfway point of season 4, the rebirth, arc 4, right? The construction, right? Episode 300 will be the harvest. Right? Episode 300 will be the harvest. So, with that being said, man, without further ado, let's get into tonight's show. Let me see if I got some sound effects loaded, right? Yeah, I got some sound effects. Let's see what we got. Right? I'll use them later. Yeah, I could use them later. But if you're new to the show and you landed here, you're at the right place. You're at the right place. You were led here. And you were led here for this specific particular night for this specific reason, right? And tonight we're going to step into a question of humanity, a question that humanity has been ducking probably since Henry George wrote it down in 1879, right? And Buckminster Fuller hammered it out into print in 1969, right? And you probably wonder, like, what is he talking about? What is he talking about? Well, I'm going to tell you in a second. I'm going to tell you in a second, right? I'm going to tell you in a second. So, what I'm referring to, that question, right? The question is this. What does it actually mean that we are already, right now, on a spaceship? Right? On a spaceship. Right? What? That's not a metaphor. It's not a poem. And it's definitely not science fiction framing, right? A spaceship. A sealed, stay with me, a sealed vehicle with a mixed mass of resources, a closed atmosphere, a finite skin, a single power source, and a crew of about 8 billion people, right? Every system that keeps you alive is on this ship. Every meal you have ever eaten came from this ship. Every breath, every drop of water. And look, there's no port. There's no resupply convoy. There's only the vessel and the people that are aboard, right? So, before we get into tonight's show, let me go ahead and give you the brass tacks, man. The brass tacks of the evening. And the brass tacks of the evening is this right here. The ship was issued without a manual. We are the manual. Write it or perish, right? That, my friend, is the brass tacks. Now, some of you are thinking like, wait a minute. What do you mean without a manual, without steering controls? Look, Noah had the ark. The ark had no steering mechanism. The ark was a boat. It had a destination. Think about it. Sit with that, right? The ark had a destination. There was no steering, right? For all you Navy folks out there and sailors, look, the ark had no navigation. It had no steering mechanism, but it had a destination. It had a pre-programmed navigation system, right? And we all, of course, know who that navigator was, who was running that ship, right? It definitely wasn't Noah, even though he and his family and all of the occupants were headed to that destination, right? Give me a quick commercial break. I got to turn something off. I shall be right back. All right, sorry about that. A little bit of interference. Look, if that resonated with you, or I want you to sit with that, and I want you to sit with that thought process for the entire show, right? For the entire show. So, for those who don't know, let me give you the gist of what I'm tonight's show. We are in Arc 4 of the season 4, the rebirth, right? The construction. Construction ignited May 17th, episode 240 on Sitting Down Sundays. Arc 4 is not theory anymore, right? We are here and Arc 4 is in the building. And what we build is determined by what we accept. Tonight, we accept the vessel. Tonight, we accept the responsibility of the crew. Tonight, we connect the doctoral spine, the MERGE living white paper paired with Clefro's strategic white paper to the oldest navigational reality humanity has ever managed to ignore, right? We are inside the ship, and we never, ever, ever go outside of it, right? Now, we move through history, and we move through history of the metaphor, right? The physics of our actual flight path, the shields that keep us alive, the closed loops we ride, the biosphere to humility lesson, right? The International Space Station as the only other functioning vessel humanity has ever built. The planetary boundaries dashboard now showing 7 of 9 warning lights, right? The warning lights are on. The Christmas tree light up pattern is on the dashboard. The operating manual problem, right? The problem with the propulsion, the problem with the bridge crew, right? And then they have Mars as an escape question. The sovereign's verdict, right? Arc 4 construction charge. References will all be at the end for the community, right? So before we get into that, look, the community check of the evening. To the smarts, tonight we receive cosmology, right? With operational weight. Frameworks that scale to enterprise architecture. To the final bosses tonight, you receive doctrine you can ship into boardrooms and contract pages. Spaceship Earth is a leadership posture before it is a science, right? And to my motivators tonight, you take the largest possible frame for purpose, right? There is no bigger jurisdiction than the only vessel keeping the species alive. And to the warriors tonight, you accept post duty on the only ship that matters. The sentry work on a planet that you cannot leave, right? Can't leave it. This is doctoral material, right? This is also a confrontation, and both are true at the same time. The construction are demands, and the demands are this. We stop describing the ship and start operating her. We have studied the metaphor for 147 years. We have crossed 7 of 9 planetary boundaries while we studied. The construction arc is the very verdict on description. Build or perish, right? Operate or be operated on. Those are the questions, right? Now, let's get to the work. The phrase, think about this. The phrase Spaceship Earth, right, has a longer paper trail than most people realize. The trail starts in 1879 with Henry George and Progress and Poverty. George wrote that the planet is a well-provisioned ship that's sailing through space. That is the founding image. An American economist working before the Wright brothers, before powered flight existed at all, named that very ship, right? Now let's fast forward 86 years to July 9th, 1965, right? Where Adolf Stevenson II stands before the United Nations Economics and Social Council in Geneva. And in his final speech, he delivers a sentence that has been quoted in environmental literature ever since. He says, "We travel together, passengers on a little spaceship, dependent on its vulnerable reserves of air and soil. Stevenson is a Cold War diplomat and a two-failed presidential run candidate, right? He frames Earth in language that his audience can carry. The image lands at scale. And then 1 year later, in 1966, economist Kenneth E. Boulding, he publishes an essay titled The Economics of the Coming Spaceship, right? Boulding pivots to the metaphor from poetry to economics. He distinguishes between what he calls the cowboy economy and the spaceman economy, right? Cowboy economy assumes unlimited inputs and unlimited dumping grounds. Spaceman economy assumes finite stock, closed system, recycling discipline, right? That distinction is the intellectual ancestor of every sustainability framework that followed. Then Buckminster Fuller in 1969, Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth, which was a very short book with a massive shadow, right? Fuller takes the metaphor and treats it as engineering. He notes that a car comes with an owner's manual. Toasters come with an owner's manual for those who still have toasters, right? Microwaves come with an owner's manual. But the planet did not. The species is operating a vehicle of staggering complexity with no documentation, no orientation, no instructor, right? Fuller's central claim, not mine. I know who the instructor is, right? I know where the documentation is also, right? These are Fuller's words. Fuller's central claim was that the load-bearing claim of the book is the absence of a manual was a feature, right? It forced humans to use intellect. The safety factor designed into the system bought the crew time to develop the mind that could write the manual after the fact. That last claim that I just spoke of is the one tonight that we're going to pivot on, right? Because we are now living inside of the deadline, right? I just told you 8 of the 10 alarms are on, right? 8 of the 10. Now, ask yourself this. Why did a metaphor land so hard in the late 60s, right? And I got 3 reasons for you, right? Because Yuri Gagarin in 1961 produced the first human view from orbit. The Apollo 8 Earthrise photography or photograph in December of 1968 produced the visual proof of the metaphor. And Apollo 11 in July 1969, the same year, Fuller's book hit the shelves, put a human boot on the moon. Humanity could finally see the ship from the outside, right? The metaphor stopped being literary, right? It became documentary. Now, for my layman's block, right? because we do layman's block on the merger, right? So here it is. Spaceship Earth is not new, and it is not soft. It is 147 years old in 2026. It went from poet to economist to engineer to astronaut. And by the time Apollo 11 launched, every educated person on the planet had access to the picture. We have had the picture for 57 years. We have had the operating instruction problem named for 57 years, right? The deadline Fuller talked about is not somewhere in the future. The deadline started running in 1969, and the species has been late since the day the book printed, right? Arc for the construction says the late phase is over. The build phase is now. The metaphor demands construction, and tonight we build. Right? So that was the layman's block. Now, to the physics, right? To the physics. If Earth is a ship, what's her speed, right? What is her speed, right? Well, three velocities matter. None of them feel like motion. All of them are operational facts, right? And here's velocity number one. Earth rotates on her axis once every 24 hours. At the equator, the surface speed is roughly 1,037 miles per hour. At 45 degrees latitude, the cosine of 45 0.707 drops the spin to about 733 miles per hour, right? At the poles, you're nearly still. Most people listening to this episode are moving sideways at 600 to 1,000 miles per hour right now. And you feel nothing because the atmosphere moves you. The frame is co-rotating, right? And then there's velocity number two. Earth orbits the sun once every 365.25 days, right? That's the exact. The orbital path is a slight ellipse with average radius of 93 million miles. That's one astronomical unit, 149.6 million kilometers. The Britannica record gives the average orbital velocity as 29,784.8 meters per second, right? That converts to 170,225.3 kilometers per hour. 67,000 miles per hour. 30 kilometers per second, 90 miles per second. At aphelion in early July, Earth slows to about 29.29 kilometers per second. At perihelion in early January, she accelerates slightly. The variance is small. The average is staggering, right? Now, velocity number three. The sun is not stationary. I'm going to say again. The sun is not stationary, right? The sun is in orbit around the galactic center, dragging the entire solar system with her. The sun moves at approximately 70,000 kilometers per hour relative to nearby stars, around the dense center of the Milky Way galaxy. The solar system tracks at roughly 200 kilometers per second, 447,000 miles per hour. One complete galactic orbit takes about 230 million years, right? Civilization has been riding that galactic orbit for the entire history of writing without anyone in the writing being able to fill it, right? Now, those are the three velocities. Now, you stack the three vectors, you spin plus orbit plus galactic in motion, and at any instant, you are moving in three directions at once. At combined speeds that exceed what any aircraft has ever achieved. You cannot feel any of it. The ship is so engineered that the crew does not register flight, right? Now, here's my landing spot, right? Here's my landing spot. Sit in a chair right now, right? You're sitting in a chair, and you're spinning sideways at hundreds of miles per hour while you orbit the sun at 67,000 miles per hour, while you spiral through the galaxy at 447,000 miles per hour. The chair is the ship. The floor is the ship. The air around your face is the ship. There is still place. There's no still place on Earth, right? There is no resting frame. The reason it does not feel like flight is the same reason A sealed cabin on a smooth runway does not feel like flight. You are riding inside the vehicle. The vehicle does not vibrate against your body because you are part of the vehicle, right? That is the operational reality. Every decision a leader makes, every decision a parent makes, every decision a company makes, every decision a sovereign like myself makes, gets made aboard a moving spacecraft. The arc for construction lens requires that we stop deciding as if we are stationary. The ship is in flight. The crew is on duty. We need to start acting and deciding accordingly, right? That's the layman's book. Now, if you didn't know it, the ship has shields, right? It has two of them. They're layered, right? And without them, the crew will be dead in days. The entire crew, all 8 billion entire crew, right? And let's talk about those shields, right? Because shield number one is the magnetosphere, right? Generated by Earth's molten iron outer core, right? The Goody Nemo, which NASA describes as the magnetosphere as magnetic bubble extending tens of thousands of kilometers into space. Tilted approximately 11 degrees from the rotational axis. Its job is to deflect charged particles. The sun emits a continuous stream of protons and electrons called the solar wind. The solar wind that hits the magnetosphere and is forced around the planet like water flowing around a boat in the ocean, right? Without the deflection, the solar wind would erode the atmosphere. And we know this because we can see it happening elsewhere. Mars lost its magnetic field roughly about 4 billion years ago, right? The solar wind stripped Mars of most of her atmosphere. The planet went from wet to bone dry. Same star, different shield, different outcome, right? Now, the magnetosphere also creates the Van Allen belts, two donut-shaped zones that trap charged particles at a safe distance from the surface. The auroras at the poles, the aurora borealis. Look, don't shoot me. I think it's either one, right? And the aurora australis are the visual signature of particles leaking through where the field lines connect to the upper atmosphere. Beautiful evidence of an active shield, right? The field is not constant. The current geomagnetic field has weakened by approximately 10% since the 1800s. The poles drift, and the geometric reversals happen on a scale of roughly 200,000 to 200,000 years, right? That's the measure. The field does not vanish during reversals, but it does weaken. Engineers and astrobiologists watch this carefully because the field is the difference between a habitable planet and a Mars analog, right? And then there's shield 2, right? Shield 2. The atmosphere itself, right? 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, right? With trace gases. The atmosphere absorbs and scatters ultraviolet radiation. The ozone layer is the stratosphere. The ozone layer is in the stratosphere, right? And it blocks the harshest UV rays. The lower atmosphere traps heat through the greenhouse effect, right? The same effect that, when amplified by industrial carbon dioxide loading, drives the climate emergency. One of those buttons that you see on the dashboard, right? The atmosphere is also the medium of weather, the cooling system of the planet, and the carrier of the water cycle. One layer doing multiple operational jobs, right? You combine the magnetic shield and the atmospheric shield, and what you have is the habitability stack, right? Charged particles deflected, radiation absorbed, heat regulated, pressure maintained, water cycled. Every other planet in the solar system either lacks the magnetic shield or lacks the atmospheric shield, right? Or they may lack both. Earth has both, tuned to a tolerance that produces and sustains life, right? Now, for my language block, right? Two layers protect you, right? A magnetic field generated by the molten iron of the planet's core. An atmosphere 50 miles deep wrapped around the surface. The magnetic field bounces the solar wind. The atmosphere blocks ultraviolet and traps the heat that keeps water liquid, right? Strip either layer and the ship becomes uninhabitable, right? On a time scale measured in millennia, not millions of years. Look, Mars is the proof. Mars had everything Earth had until she lost the magnetic field. Then she lost the atmosphere. Then she lost the water. Then she lost life, right? The Arc for Construction lens forces a question on the crew. We can build inside the shields. We cannot build without them, right? The research that I'm working on right now, one of the white papers, addresses the power inside the shield. The other addresses the consciousness inside the shield, right? Every chapter of operating manual happens under the canopy of these two protections. And the smarts, they know this. The warriors, they guard it, right? That was my language. Everything on this ship is recycled, right? Everything. And I'm not talking about aspirationally, operationally, all of it already. The cycles have been running for 4 billion years. The water cycle, approximately 1.386 billion cubic kilometers of water on this planet. 97% salt, 3% fresh, mostly locked in ice and groundwater. The water you drank yesterday has been around since the planet had liquid oceans. It has been ice. It has been vapor. It has been ocean, river, glacier, cloud, sweat, blood, and back. The cycle, right? Evaporation, condensation, precipitation, runoff, percolation. It's a closed loop. There's no fresh water arriving from the outside, right? The carbon cycle, the carbon moves between the atmosphere, the oceans, the soils, the biota, and rocks, right? Photosynthesis pulls carbon dioxide out of the air and locks it into plant tissue. Respiration and decomposition release it back. Combustion releases stored carbon from biomass on short time scales and from fossil fuels on a geological scale or time scale, right? The cycle is closed, but the stock distribution is not fixed. When humans burn through 300 million year old carbon at industrial scale, the atmospheric concentration rises because we are loading the atmospheric tank faster than the biosphere can sink the excess. The cycle remains closed. The pressure inside the cycle changes, right? Exactly. Nothing ever truly dies. Exactly, right? Thank you for that. The nitrogen cycle, right? The nitrogen cycle, let's go about it. Nitrogen fixation by solid bacteria, nitrification, denitrification. The atmosphere is 78% nitrogen, but living organisms cannot use atmospheric nitrogen directly. Soil microbes do the conversion work that feeds the food web. The Haber-Bosch process, invented in 1909, allowed humans to fix nitrogen industrially. That single invention doubled the carrying capacity of human agriculture and also produced the massive runoff loading that now constitutes one of the transgressed planetary boundaries, right? Think about it. Then there's the energy budget. The sun delivers approximately 1,361 watts of pure square meter at the top of the atmosphere energy. About 30% is reflected back to space by clouds, ice, and atmosphere. About 70% is absorbed and re-radiated as heat. The system was approximately in radioactive balance for most of the Holocene, right? The 11,700 year geological window during which civilization developed. It is no longer in balance. It is one of the red buttons that is going off on the dashboard. The atmosphere is now retaining more heat than it radiates, and by a measurable margin, right? And you have to ask, what this teaches the crew is something Buckminster Fuller said in different words. He said the ship runs on cycles, not stockpiles. There's no waste hatch. There's no fresh air vent connected to a tank outside. There's no carbon disposal route off the planet. Every output becomes someone's input. The cycles are the operating system, right? And here's my language. I know. I see. Listen, I told you I'm going to do an episode that's going to be solely layman's block, right? It's coming. Watch out for it. I'm going to do that. Too many people are asking, well, why don't you do a layman's block on Merger Wednesday and just do the layman's block? It's coming. Trust me, it's coming. Thank you for that, Frank. I appreciate it. It's coming, bro. Listen, layman's block. The water in your body, and pay attention, take notes, pay attention to this, right? The water in your body, the carbon in your breath, the nitrogen in your protein, the heat warming your skin, all of it cycles. The ship has no outside. Every cup of coffee, every gallon of gas, every steak, every flight, every server farm, every concrete pour, all of it lands somewhere. It does not leave. It moves to a new compartment of the same ship. When the cycles are healthy, the ship runs. When the cycles overload, the ship registers the overload as climate, as biodiversity loss, as ocean acidification, as soil collapses, right? The Art for Construction lens names the discipline. Build cycle awareness. Design every product, every system, every enterprise as if the outputs land in your own kitchen, because they do. Think about it, right? The ship has no kitchen but yours. Think about that. Let us sit with that, right? Sit with that. The white paper, the first white paper I'm working on is a power vision. And the second white paper is the consciousness architecture, both in code, right? Cycles, not stockpiles. Awareness, not extraction. Now, humanity ran the experiment. We sealed the building and tried to be Earth, right? On September 26, 1991, Oracle, Arizona, 8 people entered the Biosphere, or Biosphere number 2, a 3.14 acre glass and steel structure built between 1987 and 1991. It is still the largest closed ecological system ever constructed. Inside the seal were 5 biomes, right? A rainforest, an ocean with a working coral reef, a mangrove wetland, a savanna, a desert, plus an agriculture area for food and food production, and a human habitat for the crew. The plan was 2 years of complete closure. The experiment was a proof of concept for the closed loop life support on long duration space missions and research probe into Earth's biosphere bionology. It nearly killed them, right? It nearly killed the whole team. Within 16 to 18 months, atmospheric oxygen inside the dome had fallen from 21% at start to 14%. The crew was functioning at the equivalent of high altitude. They had headaches, they had fatigue, they had cognitive impairment. One crew physician, Roy Walford, could not complete simple arithmetic. Management decided to inject pure oxygen from outside the seal. That decision ended the integrity of the experiment, but kept the crew alive, right? Carbon dioxide concentrations climbed to between 2,000 and 4,000 parts per million inside the dome, compared to about 350 parts per million in outside air at the time. The cause was not human respiration alone. It was soil microbes inside the rainforest and the savanna biomes were metabolizing the soil's high organic load and consuming oxygen at a much faster rate than the plants could regenerate. Worse, the dome's concrete absorbed carbon dioxide as it cured, locking some of the missing oxygen into calcium carbonate inside the structural walls. Concrete became part of the atmosphere and nobody planned for it, right? And by the end of the 2-year closure, approximately 30% of the species inside the biosphere had died. All of the pollinators had died. Crops needed hand pollination. Algae blooms colonized the water bodies. The crew completed their 2 years on September 26, 1993, but the lesson was clear. A closed system contains every surface in it, every chemical reaction, every microbial pollution or population, right? Variables nobody flagged in the design became variables that nearly suffocated the crew, right? Here's my lemons block. Think about this, right? 8 of the smartest, well-funded, well-prepared humans built the most ambitious sealed terrarium in history and could not keep oxygen stable for 2 years. Soil bugs ate the oxygen, concrete walls drank the carbon, bees died, crops failed. The team had to break the cycle and pump in air or they would have lost the crew. This happened in 3.14 acres with 8 people. Earth is 510 million square kilometers with 8 billion people and trillions of organisms. The number of unmodeled variables is incomprehensibly larger, right? The Biosphere 2 lesson is not the closed systems are impossible. The lesson is that the closed systems are humbler than human modeling, right? The lesson is that the confidence about Earth's resilience must be calibrated against what Earth actually is. We have one ship. One. We do not have a backup experiment running. We cannot artificially pump oxygen onto the ship. The dashboard on the actual ship is now lighting up, and unlike Biosphere 2, there is no outside pump to inject oxygen into the planet if the cycles fail, right? The dashboard is glowing. There's Christmas lights everywhere. The Arc for Construction lens cites Biosphere 2 as the cautionary footnote on every chapter of the operating manual, built with humility, right? Model the variables you do not yet know exist. The species that cannot pollinate the savanna cannot pilot the ship. The species that cannot pollinate the savanna cannot pilot the ship, right? That's the name of this block. Look, humanity has built exactly one other working sealed habitat capable of sustaining human life. The International Space Station, operational since November 2nd, 2000. Continuous human presence for 25 years and counting. The system that keeps the ISS crew alive is called the ECLSS, which stands for Environmental Control and Life Support System. 3 core subsystems: water recovery system, air revitalization system, the oxygen generation system. They sit in 4 refrigerator-sized racks inside the United States Tranquility module, right? They were designed at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center with industry partners, right? The numbers, as published by NASA's most recent ECLSS fact sheet in 2025, are notable. The ECLSS now reclaims 98% of all astronauts' sweat and urine, right? Water recovery has been operating on stations since 2008. Astronauts need about a half a gallon of water per day. The same need that every human on Earth has right now, right? Oxygen aboard the ISS is generated through what is it called? It's an electrical current from the solar panels that splits water molecules into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas, right? I can't think of what that's called. I forgot it. It's electro something, right? The oxygen is breathed. The hydrogen is either vented or routed into a reactor, which combines hydrogen with crew exhaled carbon dioxide to produce methane and additional water. The water enters the loop. The methane is vented. Future systems are targeting 95% oxygen recovery from CO2 and 98% overall water recovery for long duration missions to the moon and beyond, right? This matters. And this matters because the ISS is the only fully operational human-rated closed-loop spacecraft system humanity has ever fielded. Every other space program runs on resupply. The ISS runs on resupply too, but at a far smaller margin, right? The trajectory of ECLSS technology is toward higher closure, toward less resupply, toward more cycle integrity. Honeywell and other contractors are working on the next generation system for deep space exploration, where resupply is near impossible, right? And here's the doctoral point. The engineering posture aboard the ISS is the exact engineering posture Earth requires. You treat every output as a future input. You treat every loss as a system failure. You treat every resupply as a luxury and not a default. ISS crews recycle 98% of their water because they have to. Earth recycles approximately 100% of her water naturally. But human industrial throughput has shifted the loading on the cycles to the point where fresh water change across the planetary boundary in 2023. The ISS is the dress rehearsal for the planet. We are the planet. Here's my latest one, right? Up in low Earth orbit, a small crew lives inside a tin can the size of about a 6-bedroom house, right? Their water comes from their own sweat and urine. 98% is recovered. Their oxygen comes from the electrolyzing of the water. Their CO2 gets reacted with hydrogen to make more water. They do not waste anything because they cannot. The hardware in those 4 racks in the Tranquility Module is the most disciplined operating manual humanity has ever written for itself. The Arc 4 construction lens takes this directly. If a small crew running on partial resupply can hit 98% closure, an 8 billion person crew running on 0 resupply can do better with the current trend line. The question is not capability. The question is acceptance of the vehicle we are aboard. The smarts community can engineer it. The final bosses can fund it. The motivators can frame it. The warriors can defend it. The architecture is the same as the ISS. It's scaled, I should say, to the planet, right? It's scaled. That's the language block. I need something to drink. Yeah. Now, let's talk about this dashboard that's glowing and as bright as a Christmas tree, right? The instrument panel of the ship, right? Because the Planetary Boundaries Framework was published in 2009 by Stockholm Resilience Center that led at the time by John Rockstrom and his colleagues, right? The premise is straightforward. There are 9 global biophysical processes that have maintained the relatively stable Holocene state for the last 11,700 years. If those processes are pushed past certain thresholds, the Earth system may shift to a new state that is not friendly to human civilization. The framework names the thresholds. The thresholds are the gauges on the dashboard, right? The down boundaries are climate change, biosphere integrity, biogeochemical flows of nitrogen and phosphorus, right? Land system change, fresh water change, and novel entities. Stratospheric ozone depletion, atmospheric aerosol loading, and ocean acidification. The first major update was in 2015. The second update was in 2023, led by Catherine Richardson at the University of Copenhagen. With 29 scientists from 8 countries who published in Science Advances, the paper was the alarm bell that led us to this. 6 of 9 boundaries, 6 of 9, have transgressed. The paper concluded that humanity was operating well outside the safe space for civilization. The 2025 update, published in the Planetary Health Check by Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research, using the Stockholm Resilience Center framework, added ocean acidification as the 7th transgressed boundary. As of now, right now, 7 of the 9 warning lights or indicators are red. Only stratospheric ozone slightly recovering, right? Or recovering. I'm sorry. Thanks to the Montreal Protocol. The atmospheric aerosol loading are still inside the safe operating range globally, right? But listen, that's like going from no diabetes to diabetes 2, I think it's called, right? You understand? This it's about the ranges, right? Or pre-diabetes, I should say, right? Climate change, transgressed. Biosphere integrity, transgressed. Nitrogen and phosphorus flows, transgressed. Land system change, transgressed. Freshwater change, transgressed. Novel entities, all have transgressed. The category that covers synthetic chemicals and plastics, that's what novel entities are, right? And then there's ocean acidification, which is newly added in 2025. All are markers of transgress. The dashboard is lit. That's the ship's instrument panel, right? 7 of 9 warning lights are on. The pilots cannot pretend the panel is not lit. The crew cannot pretend the gauges are aesthetics, right? And here's my language part. The planet has 9 main systems that keep it livable, right? 7 of those 9 are now broken to a degree that scientists with no political agenda say the entire civilization support structure is operating outside of safe limits. The atmosphere is heating. The species count is collapsing. Nitrogen runoff is poisoning coastal zones worldwide. Soils are degrading. Rivers and groundwater are out of balance. Plastics and synthetics, chemicals are everywhere, including in our blood, right? The oceans are acidifying as they absorb the CO2 that the air cannot hold. The only 2 indicators still in the green are the ozone layer, which we fix once we prove we can fix things. The aerosol loading, which is regionally bad, but globally not yet in the danger zone. Keyword yet, right? The Stockholm Resilience Center is not a fringe outfit. The Potsdam Institute is not a fringe outfit. Science Advances is one of the highest impact scientific journal that's on this planet. The numbers are real. The Arc 4 construction lens demands that the doctoral output of the MERGE and the strategic output of the second white paper incorporate the planetary boundaries dashboard as input to every chapter. You build inside the gauges. You build to bring the gauges back into safe range. Anything else is decoration on a ship that is taking in water. Final bosses do not ignore dashboards. The warriors do not ignore alerts. The smarts do not ignore instrumentation. The motivators do not ignore states. And tonight, the dashboard is formally part of the doctrine, right? Formally part of the doctrine. Now, I'm gonna go over a little bit. I just did a quick time check, so stay with me. Give me 10 minutes. Maybe not 10 minutes, right? Yeah, give me 10 minutes. Right? Buckminster Fuller, most important sentence, sits burrowed inside a paragraph. And that sentence is this: no instruction book came with the ship. The sentence is not nostalgia. It is the founding problem of human governance, human leadership, human enterprise, and human consciousness that's on this planet. There's no manual. There's never been a manual. Noah didn't have a manual, right? We are writing it as we operate, right? And the vehicle is not slowing down, and it's not waiting for us to finish the chapter that we're in. And you want to know why this matters in Arc 4, the rebirth? Let me tell you, right? Because every framework that has tried to be a manual has been partial. Religion produced moral manuals, but had nothing to say about nitrogen runoff. Economics produced exchange manuals, but had nothing to say about ocean acidification until it was damn near too late. Engineering produced technical manuals, but had nothing to say about the ethics of who gets to ride. Science produced disruptive manuals, but had nothing to say about the meaning of the ride. Each discipline drafted a chapter. No discipline wrote the entire book. The book remains unfinished. The flight continues. The consciousness sovereignty architecture, which is the doctoral spine of the MERGE book series, takes the problem as its central object. Sovereignty in the architecture is not about borders on a map. Sovereignty is about the awareness inside of a vehicle. Who is the operator? Who is the captain? Who is the crew? Who is the passenger? Who is the cargo? These are not abstract questions. These are the questions Fuller pointed at without naming them, right? Without sovereignty, there is no operator. Without an operator, there is no manual. Without a manual, the ship flies on autopilot. And autopilot was set by extraction economies that have already crashed 7 of the 9 instrument panels, right? The sovereignty architecture answers the manual problem in 3 layers. Layer 1, cognitive sovereignty. The individuals reclaims awareness from the systems trying to capture it. Then there's layer 2, relational sovereignty. Communities reclaim coherence from algorithms trying to fragment them, right? And then there's layer 3. Layer 3 is the network sovereignty. The planetary crew reclaims navigation from the platforms and the incumbents trying to drive the ship into the rocks for quarterly extraction. That, my friends, is the architecture. 3 layers, scale from individual to planetary, mapped into the spaceship metaphor that Fuller named and Stevenson popularized and George wrote first in 1879. The Merge Living White Paper, now at a version 1, version 1.2, 1.23, something like that, right? After last week's update, right? It's an operational living document of the architecture. It is the chapter we're building inside the ship while the ship is flying, right? Now, the second white paper that I'm working on, right? That's energy, right? It deals with energy. Because Merge is the consciousness chapter. The community work across smarts, final bosses, motivators, and warriors is the crew assignment chapter. The brand work under the sovereign umbrella is the bridge officer training chapter. Each of these is doctrine, each is shipping, each is service for one task. I'm writing the operating manual. We're going to operate the ship. We're going to pass the manual to the next generation of the crew so they don't have to start from scratch. Fuller said the absence of the manual was a feature. The species had to develop the intellect to write it. 57 years later, we have the intellect. We have the data. We have the dashboards. We have the architecture. We have the vehicle. We have the lack, and what we lack is the discipline, right? We lack the discipline to ship the manual. Our quarter construction is the discipline, the build phase, the ink phase, the write or perish phase, right? Operate or be operated on, right? Now, yeah, give me a couple more minutes. Just a couple more, right? And we'll be done. I'm thirsty. I hope everybody's enjoying the show tonight. I know there's a lot of information, a lot of metaphors, right? But the layman's block helps, man. I know it does. Yes, it does, Frank. The layman's block help, right? So here's the thing. Let's talk about the escape question. There's an escape question. And the likelihood of us being on that escape plan is slim to none, right? Listen, SpaceX has stated that in the late part of this year, the Earth-Mars transfer window is the target for the first uncrewed Starship to Mars. Elon Musk gave the mission 50-50 odds in his speech from May 2025. The window opens once every 26 months because of orbital mechanics. If 2026 fails, the next window is in 2028. The transit takes 7 to 9 months. The first crew landings are forecast for 2029 in best case or 2030 in a realistic case. Musk has stated the long-term plan as 1,000 to 2,000 starships per window, eventually carrying hundreds of thousands of people to Mars to establish what he calls a self-sustaining civilization, right? The framing language Musk uses is civilizational resilience. 2 planets, both self-sustaining. So that if one fails and the other survives, Mars is the backup. Earth is the primary. The argument has been called by some commentators the most important project in human history, and by other commentators, the largest distraction from terrestrial sovereignty in the modern era. Both positions deserve doctoral examination, right? And here's the case for Mars, right? Mars. The single planet civilizations are statistically fragile. Excuse me. It has asteroid impact. It has a supervolcano. It has nuclear exchange. It's engineered pathogens, right? The same planetary boundaries we breach can be breached so far that civilization collapses. A second planet hedges that risk. Investment in interplanetary engineering accelerates closed loops life supports, right? Advanced manufacturing, robotics, and energy systems that flow back to Earth, right? The ISS and the ECLSS to Mars technology lineage is real, and the productive chain is real. Honeywell is already building the next generation ECLSS targeting 95% oxygen recovery from CO2, specifically because deep space missions demand it. The case against Mars is primarily framed. Mars is colder, drier, magnetically unshielded, atmospherically thin. The terraforming required to make Mars Earth is like a multi-century project, possibly a multi-millennial project. It may not be physically possible without an active magnetosphere that Mars cannot easily regrow. The resources required to ship people to Mars at scale are extracted from the same planetary system that is already past 7 of the 9 boundaries. The narrative that is for that escape is possible relieves the crew of the discipline required to operate the ship they already have. The sovereign verdict on the Mars question is not binary. The verdict is sequential. The crew aboard the current ship has not yet written the operating manual for the current ship. Until the manual is written, every dollar, every jewel diverted to a backup ship is a chapter not written for the primary ship. Mars belongs in the long-range plan. Mars does not belong in the excuse generator. The construction arc says the same thing to every final boss, every smarts engineer, every motivator, every warrior. We must master the ship that we're on, then build the next one if you wish, right? And here's my layman's block, right? We're almost done. Stay with me. Going to Mars is real. The window is late 2026 for an uncrewed flight and 2029 to 2031 for the first humans. The plan is ambitious. The plan is also being used by some people as a reason not to fix the planet they're already on. Both can be examined. The doctrine of the merge and the strategy of the second white paper are designed for the ship we have, not the ship we have to build later. Master the present vehicle, and we earn the next, right? The sovereign does not abandon ship. The sovereign operates the ship, right? That's the layman's block. Now, we're almost done. We have to start asking ourselves, what does construction look like when you have accepted that you're aboard the ship, right? Accept that fact so we can build. And it looks like the discipline of finishing. The rebirth framing applies in every episode of season 4 across all 5 shows. Motivation Mondays, Tech Tuesdays, Merger Wednesdays, Special Guest Thursdays, Sitting Down Sundays. The lens is not decoration. The lens is not the filter. The rebirth means the old extraction default is dead. The rebirth means the new stewardship default is being born inside the actions of crew who decide to operate as crew. The rebirth means every framework we ship through this network is in service of one outcome. The species learning to operate the vehicle it inherited. Arc 4 The Construction Ignited on Sitting Down Sundays, episode 240, which aired on May 17th, 2026. The first 10 days of the Arc produced Motivation Mondays on the discipline actions, right? Tech Tuesday segments was on AI infrastructure security. Sitting Down Sundays anchors on translation language. And tonight, Merger Wednesdays, number 23, The Locked Earth as a Spaceship Anchor for Arc 4. This is the first escalation episode of the construction arc. The arc opens with consciousness sovereignty as planetary architecture. The arc closes at episode 270 with the construction phase fully manifest across all 4 community streams. For my Smarts Community Construction arc, 4 looks like delivering working code, working architectures, working models, not white papers about future systems. Talking about working systems that are in production, a research path, a technical substrate. Then a AI vetting model or vetting agent and operational deployment. Every Smarts output ships during Arc 4 or it does not exist, right? For my Final Boss Community, construction in Arc 4 looks like closing contracts that align within the ship, refusing extraction deals, underwriting closed loop ventures, building the financial architecture of stewardship enterprise. The Final Boss Podcast, LLC, Saturn Digital Networks Development Corporation, every entity in the portfolio, every entity in your portfolio operating to ship discipline. And for my motivators community, construction in Arc 4 looks like daily output that holds the line. Words on platforms, faces on cameras, voices in rooms. Every motivator becomes a node of the narrative that says that the species can operate the ship. Every motivator becomes a contingent of crew posture against the dominant default of passenger comfort. And for my Warriors community, construction in Arc 4 looks like active defense. Combat veteran discipline applied to civilian sovereignty. Sentry duty on architectures under attack. Whether the attack is technical, legal, narrative, or psychological, the warrior community holds the line. The ship has perimeter. The perimeter has guards. The guards do not sleep. 5 episodes per week. 53 Merger Wednesdays in the Year 1 series, right? 22 episodes shipped through Arc 1, Arc 2, and Arc 3. And tonight is Arc 4 Merger number 23. 30 more Merger Wednesdays remaining in the Year 1 catalog. The Merge Living White Paper, a version 1.2 and 1.23, will continue after this episode, right? For the rest of the year. The other white paper sits at a version 1.23 with strategic updates at research as the research deepens, right? Arc 4 construction lens is not aspirational. The Arc 4 construction lens is operational. Every episode is a chapter. Every chapter is deliverable. Every deliverable advances the operating manual. The speech or the species has owed itself since 1969. We do not have permission to be late. The dashboard is lit. The cycles are loaded. The construction phase is now, right? And in closing, the ship was issued without a manual. We are the manual, right? Write it or perish. That is the brass tacks line that opened this episode. It is the line that also closes it, right? Because Henry George named the ship in 1879. Adali Stevenson popularized the ship in 1965 at the United Nations. Kenneth Boulding economically formalized the ship in 1966. Buckminster Fuller wrote the foundational operating problem in 1969. 57 years of dashboards lighting up. 57 years of metaphor that kept being treated as poetry instead of literal description of the only vehicle keeping the species alive. Tonight, we accepted the literal reading. Tonight, we walked the physics. 30 kilometers per second around the sun, 200 kilometers per second around the galactic center, 2 layers of shielding generated by a molten iron core, and an atmosphere 50 miles thick. Closed loops on water, carbon, nitrogen, and energy. Biosphere 2 lesson on humility. The ISS lesson on discipline. The planetary boundaries lesson on 7 of 9 warning lights. The operation manual problem named by Fuller and answered by the consciousness sovereignty architecture. The second white paper as the power chapter. The first white paper as the consciousness chapter. The Mars question handled as sequence, not as escape. The sovereignty's verdict of the crew with duties across all 4 communities. And this is my final word, right? Smarts build the systems that respect the cycles. Final bosses fund the enterprises that protect the cycles. Motivators hold the narrative that names the cycles. Warriors defend the architecture that runs the cycles. This has been Arc 4 Construction, Merger Wednesdays, episode 23, episode 248 of the Final Boss podcast. I am the Final Boss, and we're on multiple platforms, live Eastern time at 2100, right? Or 9 o'clock, right? The 2 white papers synchronized within this episode, right? That is our show, ladies and gentlemen. Every episode adds a new chapter to the doctoral catalog spot that I'm working on, right? And tonight's so different. And to each and every last one of you, if I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, right? That is our show. That is our show. And remember, there is a heavy pain that comes with discipline, but there is an even heavier pain that comes with regret. I am here. We are here. And as always, remember, be balanced, be equal, and be smart. Share this, subscribe this episode, and make sure that you don't gatekeep the information. Send it out to as many people as possible. Y'all have a great night, and I will see you tomorrow for Special Guest Thursdays, episode number 249. See you soon.
It's Merger Wednesday. The countdown continues. 7 years until the convergence of biology and machine. Neural interfaces are no longer theory. They're the scaffolding of a new consciousness. But what does that mean for identity? For free will, for the soul? This is where we build the frameworks for ethical, philosophical, and spiritual growth for the next phase of human evolution. We're not just upgrading hardware. We're rewriting what it means to be human. Each week, we explore the biotech breakthroughs, decode the cognitive shifts, and prepare the mind for the merge. This isn't about fear, it's about readiness. Because the future isn't waiting. It's already wiring in. This is about preparing human consciousness for the most significant leap in our species' history. If you think this is just about chips and brains, you're not ready. But we'll get you there, one Wednesday at a time. So sit back and relax as we take you on a journey on Merger Wednesday.